Okay. All right, here we go. So we got a short time to tell a big story. This is a story about Private Marinon. He's down at Fort Jackson, South Carolina, and I got called on him on the 13th of November of last year. And I got called from Sonny Borelli. He's a state senator out of the state of Arizona. And he and Jack Donna, former Master Sergeant Army, retired, and then some other players have been interposing for this soldier since the very beginning of his issues. So I want to go ahead and get into that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to screen share the PowerPoint because this is really going to bring it home for us. So now you can see, it should be over here. That's what we're looking at. I'm screen sharing. Okay, so we're going to start the video. Bear with me. We're going to go from beginning. There we go. Now you're seeing what we're seeing. So Private Marinon is from South America. He married a lady who is a physician in the state of Arizona. He's a little bit older than your average soldier. This is going to play into this because this is important regarding personality conflict you brought up earlier, which was really an important thing. And he joined the Army because he felt like he wanted to give something back to this country. He's a student of history. He's a student of military history. He's a person that stands up for himself. He does stand up for himself. With sometimes in the military, you got to be cautious with that, especially when you're dealing with the rest of your cohorts being 18 years old.
Yeah, and newly in training and all that. Oh, very different environment.
Yes, very different environment. And I came into the Army in '83, and we'll go through that. But I came in as a young guy. This is me, 83 to 2022, active guard, reserves, back and forth a couple times. The wars came along, and I went back down range. But that's my context. I know what Army looks like. I know what's right, I know what's wrong. Especially as a doc, I was special staff to every commander since 2003 on. So I was the guy that understood the command climate. This is our soldier here in question. This is Private Marinon. I've talked to him a few times. Great soldier. He understands these Army values, and he lives it. And he was really one of the personality issues that I saw when he was telling his story was, hey, look, this sergeant, came to me and told me I don't need to be training soldiers because I'm telling them U.S. history. I don't need to be doing that. Okay, so there was already a personality clash, and we're going to talk about the players in this story here as we go along. And you and I both know that sometimes that's intimidating for certain people, especially when you got a smart kid under your command.
Yeah, especially, and that goes into the play when you're older. So we're talking about a guy who's 26, 27 years old around 18-year-olds, and that's a significant maturity gap. And when you're in a training environment like this, you have to understand that drill sergeants are the end all be all. What they say goes. That is the law. They have a tremendous amount of power and authority, and so for a guy like this to not doing anything wrong, but he's relaying this information and getting squashed like this, it's going to have a clash of personalities immediately.
I see that completely, and we brought in Dave Wilson. He's a retired major, also former JAG, judge, advocate, general, lawyer with the military. So he understands the system. So he's the representative right now for Private Marinon from the civilian side of the house. He has counsel in the military. It was provided, not in the very beginning. Understand this. He's been in basically confinement for 5 months. 5 days from now, it'll be 5 months.
That's unreal.
With no piece of paper other than one counseling statement that came out about 3 weeks ago.
I mean, that's just an absolute egregious miscarriage of justice.
That is a miscarriage of justice, and it's not due process. No. There is due process under Uniform Code of Military Justice.
Very much so is.
Very much so. And so that's a fail. No, it's fail number one. Here's the crime. All right, so take a look at that picture and think, okay, well, what about this would be a crime? Understand that the soldiers nowadays, we didn't have it in my day, but they get to keep their phones at basic training, and then on the weekends, they get to use them to call their families. Instead of having to waiting a long line to go to a payphone, they get to get their phone. Well, soldiers that are in the command, that are holdovers, whatnot, they go and they're tasked with charging the soldiers' phones. So when Private Marinon's phone comes up, this screensaver comes up. Okay, so this was the crystal, the catalyst of this whole then cascade or avalanche, if you will, of moral injury, second and third order effects.
Right? Yeah.
I mean, that's where we're at. So this is a crime. And then you're going to say to yourself, well, this isn't worthy of 5 months of being quarantined. But here's the punishment.
Wait for the context.
Quarantined. And I'm using that word because this is a disease process, this moral injury. So here's the punishment. The punishment is living in the corner of that hall that they use for training and whatnot. He lives in that corner on that bunk. He gets his phone for a few hours a day. He's got a lot of extra duty. That's him at one of the ranges. He opens the ranges and closes the ranges, but he doesn't actually do it. He's just tasked with sitting here and making sure that all the ancillary things are done. The ammo is brought up. He's just being used, which is, we call that in the day non-judicial punishment. I think they still use that term. So it's he doesn't get any piece of paper that yet harms his career. He gets a lot of extra duty, right?
Right.
So that's what he's got, and he gets to eat MREs.
And you've got to keep in mind that this is not the same type of environment as somebody who's maybe in a regular unit, or who's been in a couple of years. This is still a training environment. He is still private, and so the way he's going to be treated by anybody on those ranges, whether he's driving to on the range itself or anything else, anybody with who's permanent party or an NCO, they are not going to treat him the same as if he was permanent party himself. And that's another issue here. He's been in this situation for 5 months now.
Right.
And what's being done to him is going to have significant, I haven't talked to him beyond one phone call, but what's being done to him is going to have a significant degradation on his mental, his ability to hang on, his morale and everything else. This is not acceptable.
This is not acceptable. And for 2 months before we were notified, for 2 months, he was on his own. He had no voice other than standing up for himself. And he is a person that will do that. Now, I've heard him speak, and he does speak with correct respect. That's due process.
Absolutely. I got that sense as well.
Even me, I'm out of the military, retired lieutenant colonel, but he's still, sir, yes, sir. And I'll text him and check on him and see how you're doing mentally, right? We give him tasks, if you will, read this, read that. He's a man of faith. He studies his Bible. We have discussions like a kind of a, Bible study. But anyway, we're helping this kid along. And then 3 months or 2 months into this, he reaches out because he's exhausted all resources. He's not allowed to have to even conduct an IG response to have them look into it.
Yes.
He's not allowed to have an open door, right? He's not allowed to walk into his commander's office.
And so you've got to think that we know this stuff. We know what right looks like and wrong looks like. I'm 21 years served military as well, recently retired in August, and I can tell you that he does not know what his left and right limits are or what he's allowed. So for 2 to 3 months, he was allowing this to take place because he didn't know any better. He's a new trainee in basic training, and he just thinks this is the way it is. And I've seen this over and over and over in my time doing investigative journalism within the Department of Defense and the whistleblowing stories I've uncovered. I can tell you that a lot of guys don't know what they're allowed. And so what Doc is saying here is that, like, this is the things that should have been afforded to him that his command should have done for him and stepped out on, and as a commander should have given him these counselings and said, you are allowed this, you're not allowed this. This wasn't done. This was not done for him.
Yeah, I saw the counseling statement he got. It's basically, you're going to be chaptered out under Chapter 11, and that's it. There's nothing tagged onto it to say, but I need you to do this, because that's what counseling is about.
Absolutely.
You did this, and we want you to
I'm
do this.
saying you can do this. I'm saying you're legally afforded this,
Right.
and that wasn't done.
No, there's none of that. So that's the punishment, and look, some of it's psychological punishment. He's being, when he rides out to the ranges, he's having to listen to these discussions of these sergeants that are driving the vehicles, who are basically goading him into a corner where he feels like crap, and he just, he's being treated like a criminal, and he's not.
And let me paint this picture for you. With that picture on his phone, the person who had an issue with this was an African American female who saw this picture, and she said, he has this racist picture on his phone. And you say, this doesn't make sense. This is crazy. This was a former commander in chief, but he has been labeled as a racist because of this.
Right.
So this racist goes with him everywhere he goes. And so he's in this truck with other people, and they're calling him these racist names and just being filthy to him and treating him like garbage because he has been labeled as a racist, which is all stemmed from this single picture, which I'll talk about a little bit more later.
As we talk about, as we roll into the current atmospherics in the military, I went to this next slide while you were saying that to understand that this is his senior drill instructor. This is the one that actually first interacted with the soldier regarding this issue of the Trump picture, but also other soldiers saying, well, he's talking to us about history and stuff, and we don't understand, and we don't know. So they weren't complaining to her, but she's trying to develop a picture in her head that at this point now, this kid is a racist. And how do I know this? Because of her interaction regarding his wife. His wife is a Caucasian physician, respected in the community. I think that she's actually a friend of Carrie Lake's, maybe her primary physician. I don't know, but that's something that makes people then also step back and go, whoa, this is kind of like, okay, now you're definitely ultra right. And the kid is just like, he doesn't understand the politics of America like we do, and he's just a guy that wants to serve the country and give back like my dad did after World War II when he came to America. So I understand his plight. But this sergeant here basically chastises him for being marrying outside of his race. She says, "Well, I'm married to a colored person. Why aren't you? This is you're racist. You've abandoned your race, your brown color." And this is right in itself is the egregious piece. This is what should be counseled,
Absolutely.
not this kid, because he doesn't know the regs. He doesn't know. But I tell you what, I give him credit because he stands up and says, "This is right. I want to go to the PX. I want to get my toiletries." And he'll go in and walk into the commanders or the sergeants and ask for this. Most young kids would just be quiet and just pick paint off the wall to eat it. So this sergeant here is just she's targeted him. All right, so she's the first step of this problem. All right, now we go to the first echelon. This is Captain Barrows. Well, Captain Barrows, company commander of the 165th Infantry Brigade subunit that's under them with the lightning strong, strike strong motto. This guy here completely woke DEI pusher down their throats. I don't have a picture of him. The first interaction that he had with the company was, I understand there's multiple genders. We'll just need to know what your pronouns are.
This is on sworn statements, by the way, provided to one of the attorneys.
Right.
This was actually said. There's proof. There's eyewitnesses who witnessed him saying this as a first introduction, talking about gender and how we have multiples. This is a real thing.
So you can see where as we start increasing an echelon of command, and why is it taking 5 months? Because these guys are dragging their feet. They're not doing the right thing. There's no due process, and it rolls to the next month, to where now we're at the brigade command, and we're going to talk about that. So this is the guy that I tried to interact with. This would be the battalion commander, Lieutenant Colonel Fleming. Now I've changed the slide here, but understand that my one word for this interaction is this is a complacent soldier. This is a complacent officer. He is non-existent. He's not interposed. He's not stepped in as far as I can see from my standpoint. I reached out to Lieutenant Colonel as a guy that's briefed commands for since 2003 and said, hey, let's try to take care of this problem now before it goes up to the next echelon. Obviously not happening. So this is a broken commander. He's just complacent. He's just allowing this to happen. He may be a good guy. I don't know, but he's allowing this to happen. And that you, sir, are responsible for everything that happens or fails to happen. Officer 101, right? And you're retired chief warrant officer. You understand it as well. Your command, you are responsible. And when something does happen good, you give it to your troops.
Everything good or bad is ultimately your responsibility as a commander. And yes, like you said, you give that good, but that bad, you inherit all of that as a commander.
Here's the hope, and this is the hope that I have. And I spoke to a friend of his and a colleague as well, Lieutenant Colonel, and this Colonel David A. Uthlot is now it's on his desk. He's looking at it, and he's going, well, what am I going to do with this now? On the day that he took command, this is the picture there on the screen. That's a change of command ceremony steeped in a lot of history, and this is what he said. I really can't think of a better privilege than to be taking over a brigade that's responsible for turning America's sons and daughters into the soldiers with that prime mission of being able to fight and win our nation's wars. Thank you, sir. Because here's the deal. That's what this is all about. To close with and destroy the enemy. And I'm a doctor saying this because I understand that the best weapon on the battlefield is psychological. It is the ability to push through the hard times. It has nothing to do with what I believe in the DEI programs or who I sleep with when I go to bed at night. It has nothing to do with that. And I watched it change since 1983 to 2022. And there are units that have different flavors, atmospheres,
absolutely,
fiefdoms. Okay, now this is really important. And I'm going to let Chief explain this because the fiefdom principle is fully at play here because this colonel right here has the opportunity to fix this fiefdom.
So one of the things I started to see over the last 21 years, but specifically in the last 3.5 years, as I started doing whistleblowing reports, was this bubble mentality where you had you had colonels, whether it was light colonel or full bird, or usually not at the company command level, because you just didn't have enough authority to create that little mafioso type fiefdom. But you would see this at the '05 and '06 level, where they would kind of have this unlimited authority to do whatever they want, and you would have these elements like Inspector General, JAG, what equal opportunity that would come in and they would ask questions. But by that time, you would have a commander that had kind of he had shored up his political stake in his command, and so that he knew how to run that, steer that ship. And you don't see this everywhere. This is why there's still a lot of good commanders out there, a lot of good leaders, got a lot of good units. So you have a lot of folks that don't see this, but when you dig into it and you have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people, literally thousands over the years, who have messaged me telling me firsthand accounts and stories, showing this picture across the DoD, you have these fiefdoms where you'll have these little empires that these commands create, and it is very poor form for a senior commander, such as a general officer, to come down and tell a subordinate commander not to do something unless they are egregiously doing something in violation of the law or something that is just so bad that it cannot continue. Otherwise, commanders are given the authority to maintain what they have and to command as they see fit. And this is just how we do business in the military. So you have these little, like I said, little bubbles and fiefdoms. And what you had specifically in the last 3.5 years, and I lived through this, I was a part of this, is you had this MAGA equals extremism in the military. The Secretary of Defense Austin's first priority when he came into office was to have an extremism stand down. I sat through those briefs. I was a part of this. Not only did I sit through them personally, but then I got the reports from so many people across all branches of the military who came through, and they told me what was going on. And basically everything MAGA, everything Trump was tied directly to extremism or radicalism, even though we have recent reports saying they were not able to find concrete examples of extremism in the military. That propaganda and that mindset was pushed through the entire force that anything related to Trump was extremist. And so when you see a picture like this on his phone and you say, how can all of this create that? That's how it happened. You had somebody who was triggered by a picture of the former commander in chief. They said, this is racist and whatever else. You have a clash of personalities where you have this outspoken soldier, and then you have this environment, especially in a training environment, which is very different than permanent party, where basically this kid has not been given due process. He's been labeled, he's been branded as a MAGA, as an extremist, as a racist, and all these other things. And so it is fair game for the command to go after him and tear him apart and not give him the due process that he is legally afforded. And that is what we're dealing with. And I can tell you there's more examples of this that we can't bring you here, but this one specifically is a very egregious one, because we're talking about 5 months now. He has not been afforded due process.
Right. And this is going to roll into the final thought here, is that on the 1st of January of this year at 0400 hours, the Declaration of Military Accountability was laid out there. And it was sent to the commands, it was sent to the Pentagon, it was sent to all commanders, general officers. And what it is, it's really to the people. It's a declaration to the people of the United States to understand that there needs to be accountability. That is part of our system, right? And the fiefdom thing, although I've seen it from the very beginning of the military, the focus then was close with destroy the enemy. Now we got to push DEI. Now there's fear under these subordinate commands that say, well, if I don't do this, I don't get promoted. And this life that I chose, this 20 years of whatever I chose to do, I want to leave with something. Now, some of them, their focus is working for Raytheon, and those are typically the general officers and the SESs. But for those of us that just want to be with the troops and doing the job, right, and protecting the nation and defending the Constitution of the United States, that's what caused this declaration to be released.
You will not make it to the top if you do not fully endorse and support diversity, equity, and inclusion in the military.
That's right.
A fact.
That's a fact. And so this is Lieutenant Colonel Brad Miller, and he does a little talk here. I'm going to play just a little bit, and then we're going to close out. But the rest of it's going to be available. You can go to Cloud Hub there at Vax Choice, and you can listen to the discussion that he and I had. That got 500,000 views. That tells you that this is concerning, and that was a while back. So I don't know where it's at now, but let's go ahead and just play a little bit.
If you ask people, particularly if they are lieutenant colonels, do you care about your oath to the Constitution? They're going to say yes. and many of them are going to mean it. Okay. But then you take their actions over the last couple of years and you see that their actions cannot be reconciled with what they may truly believe, you know? So this is where I'm saying it's not that they're choosing to just kind of sit on the couch. I mean, some of them are, but not all of them. It's that they're and a lot, you know, I mentioned my own cognitive dissonance, you know, that I went through in the military earlier in my career. A lot of them are feeling that now. And they're many of these people, they are good people. And many of them are still friends of mine, right? They are in a situation where they have found themselves down a dark alley and they don't know how they got there. And here's how that happened. Listen, we were all lied to about the whole COVID narrative to include the shots. And so in the military, people didn't necessarily understand on August 24th, 2021, that this was as unlawful as it is. And everyone is telling them that it's legal. All the military lawyers are telling them that it's legal. All the military medical person, when I say all, I don't mean literally all, but virtually all the military medical personnel are telling them that, like, oh, you know, COVID's, you know, super crazy and these vaccines are, you know, safe and effective, etc. So I understand, you know, when I view this as charitably as possible, I understand how people started down this alley. They think they're doing the right thing and they get further down the alley and then they realize, wait, you're telling me that when this mandate went out and it was predicated upon the existence of an FDA approved product, but yet there never was an FDA approved product? You know, like there are people that have had to grapple with that, but now they're already down that alley. If they're commanders, they've already kicked people out of the military. They've already mandated people to take this shot potentially against their will, and some of those individuals may now be injured.
All right. So what I want to do is I want to finish this up with it because that's a great lead into this. Is the final statement here. So I'm gonna leave with Chief, but I want to just say this, that we can fix this now, and this is understand that this is the end. This is the caboose right now. This thing for us as far as reaching out. We've gone all the way to congressional. We're going to send this to a senator, and we're going to continue that fight. But that's about the extent of what we can do, right? But it's going to be we the people. It's going to be you standing up and talking to each and every one of yours because we've got a system, an institution that's broken, and that institution, from my standpoint, I didn't serve 39 years total on my LES to not stand for the national defense of this nation, for those flags behind us, you know, the U.S. flag and the Texas flag and the Texas National Guard. So that's my final statement, and I'm going to turn it over, and then we'll close it out.
Very brief. I would just say my entire purpose in life is fighting for accountability in our armed forces, not just with this website militaryaccountability.com, but also just accountability in general. We talk about checks and balances in this nation as far as why is our government superior, because we have checks and balances that keeps one from taking authority over another, but we lack that in our institutions. And our military may be the worst because we have a uniform code of military justice where service members come in with this idea that's plugged into them that they are property of the government. And there is some validity to that. But what I'd say is they do not give up their right to due process and legal representation and all these other things. And yet I can tell you factually, I know hundreds, I've reported on them, I've discussed them, hundreds of service members, and I'm sure there are far more than that don't even know about what I do or anything else, that have not been represented, that have been ground down by what's going on in the military. It's because we lack accountability. There is a lack of oversight, civilian oversight from people coming in and saying, this is wrong. IG is not working. EO is not working. Sharp is not working. Whatever these programs are, they're not working. And it comes down to the fact that commanders are the end all be all. And they have so much authority that often goes unchecked. And what you're seeing here is a gross violation of a service member's, you know, his constitutional rights. The way he is being treated, the lack of due process, the lack of any kind of follow up on what he's doing. This is not right. This is not how we are supposed to do things in the military. Yet it is happening over and over and over, not just to him, but so many more. We need accountability now. We need you to start contacting your representatives and saying, hey, what's going on in the military, man? Because this isn't right. I want a military that serves and protects the United States of America and takes care of its troops, not this.
There you go. I concur. All right, this is Doc out, and we're going to go back to work down here in Central Texas. Y'all have a good day.